Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We're still aspiring to be viral. We're way over caffeinated this week, and we're definitely a proudly sponsored weekly YouTube show all about Notre Dame football fan base that sometimes considers USC a four-letter word, especially this week. I'm Eric Hansen in South Bend, and resisting the urge to call for more cowbell, he's Tyler James in LaPorte and monitoring the fallout from the James Franklin situation and what that could mean for Notre Dame recruiting. Together, we are the content creators and word salad avoiders at blueandgold.com. On tonight's show, 20 years to the week that the push game was staged in Notre Dame Stadium, a very potent USC offense comes to town again, this time meeting a surging Notre Dame defense. We'll break down all the matchups, have some key personnel updates, recruiting, and your questions. So start filling up the question portal. This is Never Sleeps.
All right. As Eric mentioned, Football Never Sleeps is now presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find everything you need, from grills to jerseys and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike and Under Armour, all at unbeatable prices every day. With 8 Academy stores across Indiana and a new store open in Mishawaka, fun can't lose and neither can you. Gear up today at Academy Sports and Outdoors. USC week is here. Who knows how often we'll be able to say that in future years, but I hope everyone is fired up for the coming weekend, and we appreciate everyone chiming in with us live on the show. Shout out T. Dawson, JG Y-Town, ND fan, Outbound, Scott Fegan, Irish fan, Jeff Stevens, Brian Habermill. We appreciate you all joining us. Many familiar names there. We especially like you guys that keep coming back to us and helping us out with questions throughout the show. Thanks to everyone watching on replay as well. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done that already. You should also consider a subscription to blueandgold.com. New users can sign up for the first week of an annual subscription for just $1. Head to blueandgold.com, hit the join now button at the top of the page, and take advantage of the new subscriber deal. All right, Eric, let's get into Marcus Freeman's press conference today. He spoke with reporters to review the win over NC State and start looking ahead at this important game against USC. What were your biggest takeaways from Freeman's press conference?
For me, it was the personnel updates, the status of Ashton Craig, who we'll get into these a little bit deeper, but who's out for the season with a knee injury. Marcus said right knee. I think the availability report said left knee, but he's out for the season. Either way, the fact that Devontae Smith is questionable, that means he might play, he might not play. He may be one of the key figures in this game. And the fact that there wasn't any hiccups, at least not yet in the week, with Noah Burnett, the kicker. It could come down to a big field goal. Noah is 5 for 5 on the season after booting 48 34-yarders against NC State on Saturday. So for me, that was the biggest. There were some other things. How about your big takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you're playing a team as talented as USC, that personnel is going to be extremely important. And obviously the unfortunate timing of the injury to Ashton Craig is an important one, and Notre Dame has to be prepared to respond with that. But I probably biased here. I was fascinated by the answers that Marcus Freeman gave to the questions that I asked him. And I wasn't the only one to ask about either of those topics, but the focus on how you stop USC wide receiver Mekhi Lemon. He said you've got to make sure you have a plan to try and not let that one person beat you. Lemon plays out of the slot a lot. Notre Dame has played a lot of different nickelbacks this season, and probably hasn't faced a team that uses the slot receiver as heavily as USC does. Eric, what do you think are Notre Dame's best solutions in terms of trying to stop a prolific wide receiver like Lemon?
Making sure that Rob Hunt has all the resources he needs in the training room to get Devontae Smith on the field. I mean, he's only played 64 snaps since he's been at Notre Dame, and he's missed 3 games and all but 7 snaps of a 4th game, and he's really good. I mean, this is why you go to the portal to fish a guy out like that for the 3rd year in a row, are games like this, and to not have him, or maybe not have him for all the snaps that you would want him to play on Saturday is difficult. So even if he plays, that's a difficult matchup for Notre Dame, because Lemon can move inside or outside. He got 9 catches for 133 yards last year. He's number 2 in the country in receiving yards per game, number 6 in receptions per game at 7.33 a game. Only one guy in the country has more touchdown passes or touchdown receptions than his 6. So he's formidable, and he's not the only good receiver. For me, I wondered about, is this the week you put Leonard Moore somewhere else? If you do that, then you're giving up, you're moving a lot of pieces around. You're putting probably Christian Gray on Jacoby Lane, the 6'4" receiver who had 3 touchdowns against Notre Dame in the big 49-35 score fest. So there are some different options, but one of them is going to include Dallas Golden, the freshman nickel, playing a lot. It's just, who does he line up against? What are your thoughts?
I'm a little nervous about the idea of putting Leonard Moore on him, just because I think USC has so much talent beyond Mekhi Lemon. Like, it's not like they have a bunch of scrubs playing receiver outside of Lemon. So I feel like it's hard to put that much attention, put your best defensive back on him, and then maybe that weakens your ability to stop some of the other guys. So maybe it's a mix and match situation. Maybe you don't do the same thing the whole time. And that's probably not a bad idea to give USC different looks, to think about what Notre Dame's doing defensively to try to disrupt what it wants to do. Because you could make an argument that, well, let's just leave Leonard Moore on an island with Lane or someone, and then give extra attention with a safety on top of Lemon. It's easier said than done. You wouldn't have so many receiving yards and catches and touchdowns if it was as simple as that. But yeah, I think Notre Dame's going to have to be multifaceted in what it wants to do to try to stop him, using Dallas Golden. Hopefully Devontae Smith is available. Using a guy like Tay Johnson to help with coverage on him. I think there's a number of different things that Notre Dame can and should try to do to disrupt Jaden Mayava's go-to wide receiver.
The thing that complicates it with this USC team is typically USC having a good running game is an afterthought. It's not this year. They're 16th in the country in rushing offense. They did lose a couple running backs, their starter, and they had, but the kid that came in as a redshirt freshman walk-on, King Miller, and he played pretty well against Michigan. The other thing is, they're very good at protecting Mayava, and Mayava's very good at protecting himself. They're 8th in the country in sacks allowed. So they're doing a lot of things besides their great passing attack, which makes it even a more difficult challenge. But I will point this out, as far as pass efficiency defense. Remember when Marcus had the uncomfortable meeting with the coaches after the Purdue game? They were 103rd. They come into this game 40th. They've moved 63 spots, and they've moved similarly in just about every other defensive category, including sacks. There's one team in the country that has more interceptions than them. They have 11. Maryland has 12. So there's a lot of good things happening with this. And then when you look at USC, who they played, Michigan is 56th in pass efficiency defense. Nobody else they've played is above 94th. So Notre Dame will actually represent the best pass defense they've seen this season.
All right. The other thing that I was interested in asking Marcus Freeman about was his aggressiveness on 4th down, and if the lack of success that Notre Dame has had this season would influence how he wants to handle those decisions moving forward. His quote was, "I don't want to pull back there. I want to say let's enhance our plan so that we have a better percentage of converting." Should we be confident that a solution is coming from Notre Dame, or do you think Notre Dame should maybe opt for more field goals and punts in certain situations?
My answer might have been different had Ashton Craig been playing in this game. And USC has been difficult against the run. They've been, again, this is a better than average USC team against the run. And they are one of the best sacking teams in the country. They're 7th in the country in sacks. They're 12th in tackles for loss. But I think maybe there's some middle ground here, Tyler, in terms of if Burnett's healthy, some of these field goals make sense. Like if it's a 45-yard field goal, I think you kick that like 4th and 8, like it was a couple of weeks ago against Boise when Notre Dame did go for it in that situation. They didn't have a healthy Burnett available. On 4th and real short, you ought to be able to get that. And I think you have to continue to find answers there. But the not having Ashton Craig, I think, does kind of affect my thinking on that. You wrote about it today, so I'm curious what your conclusion was.
Yeah, I think I'm personally, I'm not very confident that Notre Dame knows what it can do to solve the situation. Otherwise, they would have tried it by now. It has tried to throw on short yardage situations on 4th down. It has tried to run the ball. There hasn't been a consistent level of success. Right now, the first team offense is 3 of 10 on 4th down. That does include the one snap clap situation with CJ Carr at the end of the first half against Texas A&M when Notre Dame really wasn't intending to run a play. But even if you take that out, it's 3 of 9. 33% is not very good. Last year, Notre Dame's first team offense, for comparison, was 17 of 24. So Notre Dame has already failed on 4th down with its first team offense as many times this season as it did all of last season. So we're getting to the point where it's not really a small sample size anymore comparatively. Like you're not going to be able to go for it 50 times in a season. That just doesn't happen. So we're getting to the point where, okay, well, is this what Notre Dame is on 4th down? And I think at least when it comes to some of the field goals, I think there should be more consideration given to just take the points. I mean, there could be situations where maybe when your defense is struggling so much, you feel like, well, we need touchdowns, not field goals. But now Notre Dame's defense is playing better. I think you can settle for a field goal and take the points in some situations if your offense just isn't as capable of converting on 4th down as you'd like it to be. The punts, I'm not as concerned about because sometimes you're not netting a ton of yardage on a punt if you're just across the 50-yard line. Although James Randall is pretty good at keeping it inside the 20 and not getting a touchback. But I don't know. I think it's a serious problem for Notre Dame. And obviously, you avoid 4th down is one way to solve it too. But I don't have a lot of confidence that Notre Dame is getting closer to an answer right now, especially if you just watch the plays. And Marcus Freeman alluded to that. He's like, I think he essentially said that NC State had a better plan on our 4th downs than we did. Like NC State seemed to have a pretty good grasp of what Notre Dame was trying to do. And for a Notre Dame team that's trying to find maybe new answers or different answers, if NC State was still able to figure that out, that doesn't seem like a good sign. So Notre Dame's got some work to do there, and I've yet to be like, okay, this is going to come around. I'm just not sure. And to me, like the fact that they came out doing wildcat plays indicated that they probably weren't comfortable just running the ball traditionally, right? Like I think they felt like they needed to do something different, and pretty much nothing has seemed to work consistently for Notre Dame so far on 4th downs. All right, let's get into the injuries that some of that you've already alluded to. Notre Dame announced Ashton Craig will be out for the season. How big of a blow do you think that is for the Irish?
It's significant. I mean, there's talent there, but Ashton was such a leader. So you're losing kind of that emotional edge with him. A big physical center, 6'5", 310 pounds. I thought he was playing really consistently this year, coming back from an injury last year that wiped out most of his season. And I don't think that you have a real automatic wow candidate to replace him. I think the short-term solution for this week versus USC may not be the same long-term solution that you plug in there after the bye. But I think it's a significant injury. I think it's something that Notre Dame can overcome. But I mean, you're going against a team with a really good pass rush this week and a pretty decent run defense. The first game that you lose your center, and Joe Otting played 21 snaps, I want to say, in the NC State game. His Pro Football Focus grade was kind of below the default average grade, so that's not a great sign. But again, he's just kind of thrown in there unexpected, but you'd like to see a better solution than that, and we'll see if he's able to step up this week.
Yeah, Craig's grade wasn't particularly good against NC State either, so maybe there were some matchup issues on the inside for Notre Dame.
They did have some good, interior stuff.
Otting is 6'4", 308 pounds. Craig is 6'5", 310 pounds, so not a huge size difference between the two.
But it is if you consider, Absher, then that would be a big size difference.
Yeah, Absher's 6'7", 322. He has done some work at center. I'm not sure that it would make a lot of sense to try to put him in this week unless they feel extremely confident in his snapping abilities and the ability to handle everything after that. Marcus Freeman didn't mention Sullivan Absher, but he wasn't asked about him either. So there could be a chance that they might be considering that and not revealing that yet. But he expressed his faith and confidence in Joe Otting to get the job done. And that would be, I think, make the most sense going into Saturday with that option.
Right. And for the people that look at the official Notre Dame depth chart, there's not a lot of great diligence in trying to provide an accurate picture there. Jordan Botelho's been listed as possibly the third string defensive end behind Traore, and he's been starting opposite of him for almost every game this season. So,
yeah, and Absher has been listed as an or behind Gerby Lambert, even though Lambert starts every game and plays almost every first team rep at right guard. Another injury from Saturday was backup wide receiver Micah Gilbert with a left hand injury. He is going to be out for this Saturday's game against USC. He missed most of the game against NC State. How do you think his reps will be split? Do you think we'll see a similar setup with KK Smith? And what do you think of KK Smith with him getting some extended playing time on Saturday?
I was impressed with KK, and I think he would absorb those snaps. And I was talking to a source today about KK, and sometimes somebody comes into the game and they just kind of raise their level of what the coaching staff thinks about him. And he was pretty consistent in that game. And that hasn't been KK Smith's calling card. KK Smith has been flashes of, maybe he could turn into this. And in this particular game, I thought he was pretty consistent throughout his time in the game. And that may open some doors for him if he can replicate that this week in practice. Because I know Mike Denbrock has always liked him. I remember a conversation we had last year where he thought there was some Will Fuller qualities to him, but there's never been the Will Fuller consistency with KK Smith. But so he's an interesting guy to keep an eye on, I think, this week.
All right. Notre Dame has 4 players listed as questionable: nickelback Devontae Smith, wide receiver Jaden Grayhouse, tight end Cooper Flanagan, and offensive lineman Will Black. How much do you think Smith will be needed? I know we sort of talked about that already. How would you quantify Notre Dame's need for him going into Saturday?
Very urgent. I mean, when he's healthy, what we've seen of him healthy, he's been pretty good. But I mean, he played 37 snaps against Miami, I think 20 the next week, and he's played 7 since then. So we haven't seen a lot of him, and yet, that's why you go get Thomas Harper, Jordan Clark. He's the next in that lineage. So this is the game that you have in mind when you're saying, let's not just fool around with developing a freshman nickel option. Let's go out and get a veteran, and then we can bring the freshman along at a slower pace. Well, Dallas Golden has had to grow up faster. He's played 199 snaps, which is triple what Devontae Smith has played. Carson Hobbs didn't work out there initially. He's kind of worked his way back into that mix as far as a depth piece. But yeah, I mean, this is the game you want Devontae Smith to play, and if he's available, that's a nice chess piece to have.
Yeah, he seems like someone that could sort of change the calculus of what Notre Dame can do in its plan to disrupt Mekhi Lemon and the USC passing game. So you'd like to see him out there. It's unfortunate that Notre Dame has been able to use him so little, but this would be the game that you feel like you really need him for. How much would a return of Jaden Greathouse help Notre Dame's offense?
I think it would help. I think they're doing really well with him on the sideline, taking his time to get healthy. But, I mean, he helps, I think, in the red zone. I mean, he's a guy on 4th and 1 that you could throw to because he's just such a physical slot receiver that you don't see every day in the red zone, and maybe he'd be an option there. That's the one thing USC is not good at is pass defense. There's a lot of holes in their pass defense, even though they do have a safety that has a ton of interceptions, Fitzgerald. They have lots of holes in their defense, and he's a guy that could poke holes in the defense, so they'd love to have him for sure.
All right, let's hop into some questions from the chat. First one I have is from Jeremy Dreyer, who submitted this before the show. Why not go with the traditional quarterback sneak on 4th and short?
I'll let you start with that because I have maybe a breaking news text.
All right. Yeah, I think Notre Dame needs to consider that, but they just haven't used a lot of under center formations with CJ Carr. I'm not sure what the splits are in terms of if and how much Notre Dame has done that. It's very little if it has done any of that this season. Certainly they haven't been afraid to do that in the past, but I know Notre Dame practices it. Marcus Freeman talked about it. He said he felt like going under center was the solution on 4th and short, they would do that, but they don't necessarily believe that is the solution. You would think a quarterback sneak on 4th and 1 maybe works, but you usually don't want to try and sneak it beyond 1 yard unless you're really good at it or you're doing the tush push like the Eagles. But I'm not sure that Notre Dame has that in its bag.
What would you think about Minchie having a short yardage package? Are you for or against that?
I'm not sure. Well, I think I'd like to see it in practice first. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, we'd all love to see practice.
Right? Yeah. No, it's just, and the reason I say that is because CJ Carr is such a good quarterback, right? Like we're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the country with the way he's playing right now, and to take him off the field, that makes me scratch my head a little bit. Like, is that really what we need to do? Like, I'm not totally sold on that. I understand sort of the versatility that Kenny Minchie would bring. But
what if Kenny Minchie were the Wildcat? You don't take Carr off the field.
Yeah. So I mean, you could do that. I've mentioned before, like, why not Jordan Faison, right? Like someone who's done stuff like that in all kinds of different situations. Notre Dame uses him so many other ways. Like if you want to use someone that's always on the field already, and then you don't have to sub, maybe you could go up tempo in situations like that too. But yeah, I think there are solutions. I'm not sure which one is the best. I wouldn't rule out the Minchie thing, but it's just I mean, I think we're getting to the point where you got to try anything, but yeah, I think you might really be kicking yourself if like the Minchie situation doesn't work out. And you're talking about guys doing handoffs that aren't doing it all the time, that would need to spend more time doing that, which would be the case if you use someone like Faison too. So I don't know. I think Notre Dame either needs to just get better at it or stop doing it. Just stop trying to go for it. All right. Jeff Stevens says, does the center always handle the blocking change calls at the line, or is it possible that a more experienced player at guard like Schrouth would do it?
It's usually the center. I would imagine that you could have Schrouth do it. I would think Sullivan Absher could handle that. I just don't know enough about Joe Otting and his prowess. The thing where I'm resistant, I sound like I'm picking on him, and I'm not. But if you want your best 5 linemen on the field, I don't think he's one of the 5. And that doesn't address your question, but the positive thing there, Jeff, is that CJ is very good at sliding protections and doing the things at the line of scrimmage that most redshirt freshmen can't do. So that maybe mitigates this a little bit. That might be something for us to ask Marcus on Thursday about line calls.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Notre Dame's operation this season in terms of who's doing well, who's identifying the mic, it can be a team effort. It doesn't have to be just one person. So I think you can do different things. I think, like, I definitely understand the question of, is Joe Otting one of your best 5 linemen? I think center's the one position where you're willing to give some of that up because there's it's more than just being the best lineman. You got to be able to handle the snap, and that is such an important thing that if it's not going well, you will know about it, but if it's going well, you don't really think about it. So I think giving Otting's experience there, maybe not necessarily in games, but that should give him a leg up in a situation that maybe some other guys are trying to push there.
I know they love Cam Herron, the freshman, but he's like 270 or something like that. And so he's not ready yet, but that's a guy that they really like at center for down the road.
I'll stick with the center theme. T. Dawson says, with the new center, do you expect fewer shotgun snaps?
I do not expect fewer shotgun snaps. I expect them to, whoever they put in there, including Otting, to be able to handle that.
Yeah, they would. That would be what they have been practicing the entire time. That's what Notre Dame runs in terms of its base offense. So he would still be asked to do that. Scott Vegan said, I thought moving Knapp to center, Lambert to left tackle, and Absher to guard, but most likely after the bye week. What do you think of that?
I got thrown by Mike.
He was just responding to someone in the chat, I think.
Oh, so okay. Gotcha. That's why. Hey, Mike. Let's let Mike answer this. I don't know that they're going to want to move that many pieces around. I don't know. Knapp actually would be a pretty good center, but I don't know. Actually, Scott, that's not a horrible idea with a bye week, but that's 3 pieces that you're kind of moving around. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, you would have to have so little faith in Joe Otting to do that. I think like that's putting so many different guys in different positions that don't have game experience there. It's not like Anthony Knapp has played center in games before. I think we all think like if Notre Dame spent an off season with him gearing up to do that, he could be a great center, but that's not necessarily something that's been in the works. I know people love Gerby Lambert. I like him too, but I don't think left tackle is his best position personally. I don't think he shows that athleticism on the playing field, even though I do think he is a good athlete. I think he's better off right now as a guard. So I would not be in favor of that. It's too many moving pieces. I think you lose so much of the progress that you have made, and I think you put yourself in position to take an even bigger step back, unless you feel like the step back is even worse if you're stuck with Joe Otting as your center, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case.
USC again is going to really test them with their pass rush. The next team they have that's kind of like that is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really gets after you. They take a lot of chances up front, and they're successful at those. They give up some things in the back end of their defense to be risky up front, but you would have a little bit of, if you made those moves, you'd have a couple of games to get used to. You'd have Boston College and Navy before you had to face that Pitt front. That's the game where it could be problematic.
Chris W said, any update on Charles Jagasa? And Chris, you really got to be subscribed to blueandgold.com. Eric wrote about this weeks ago now. Marcus Freeman was asked about it today at his press conference, but similar information to what Eric had already reported, that Charles had to have another surgery somewhat recently. They're still trying to get him healed up and working his way back. There's no timeline for his return. So we'll see if and when he can return this season, but not something in the near future right now with Charles Jagger. Anything I missed there, Eric?
You didn't miss anything. I would say, if you said, do you think that they'll actually play him at some point? I mean, my guess would be postseason at the earliest, unless there was an injury that really forced their hand. I don't think they want to rush him back. I think the best case scenario is let him have a very deliberate rehab and reset for the spring and get him ready for next year. I think that's the ideal situation rather than trying to bring him back.
Jeff Stevens says, I wonder if Cooper Flanagan will be back this week. I don't think Freeman said anything about him.
He was on the availability report, Jeff, as questionable. This is the second week he's been questionable, which is a huge upgrade from being no way. So he's been practicing. We'll probably ask about him on Thursday, especially if there's a status change, like if they upgrade him to probable. They may be just saying, let's wait till the bye week, bring him back after the bye week. Because again, that was a fast timeline for an Achilles injury, from a January Achilles injury, for him to come back. But I do think he's a guy that could really help Notre Dame in the second half of the season.
All right. Mike DeVoy, we have a couple of James Franklin related questions I thought I'd throw in here. Mike DeVoy says, how is James Franklin going to blame his firing on ND not joining a football conference? I thought that was good. And Joseph Barrett said, any thoughts on James Franklin? I'm not going to pull up these questions. I want to get Joseph's question up here too. Any thoughts on James Franklin dismissal from Penn State? So go ahead, Eric.
I think James Franklin needs to be the 19th member of the Big Ten all on his lonesome. I know Notre Dame's fan base in general doesn't have great love for James Franklin or even tolerance and so forth. I posted the firing yesterday with a wow on it. I don't think that him getting fired was necessarily a surprise to me initially, but the timing of it was. And then again, I was talking to a really good source today, and there's some stuff in terms of staff disharmony, in terms of bickering, and some problems beyond just losing to Northwestern and UCLA that show up in losses to Northwestern and UCLA. And so this source wasn't surprised that the dam kind of broke and it was time to get rid of James Franklin. This is a guy that was in the Final Four last year, and despite the fact that he was 5-21 against top 10 teams, he was usually money against teams like UCLA and Northwestern. So I was initially surprised. The more people I've talked to, it doesn't sound like it was as big a surprise as I thought. But I don't follow Penn State because they're not on Notre Dame's schedule. I have only so much bandwidth.
It's interesting that now was the time that they felt like, okay, we're done, considering what happened just last season. Do you see any like, obviously we don't know the program as well as we do Notre Dame's, but like, to me, I draw comparisons to Notre Dame's 2016 season with Brian Kelly, and I think the two of us were pretty adamant
Which
that
season of Brian Kelly? 2016?
the 2016 season when they only won four games. I think both of us were pretty adamant that we thought that Notre Dame should stick with Brian Kelly. Obviously, It needed to make changes within its program to get in a better spot than it was. And so I just wonder, I think Penn State can do worse than James Franklin, and so this is a very important hire here moving forward, because I think Penn State could drop even further than just 3 losses in a season coming off of a college football playoff semifinal run. So I'm very interested to see. I saw Matt Rule's name thrown around. It's like, okay, that doesn't excite me. I don't know.
The source I talked to was not excited about Matt Rule either. He said, "What did he win?"
Yeah. So, I think, and that was part of my thoughts with Brian Kelly back in 2016. Who's the obvious coach that's better than him for Notre Dame at that point? So it'll be interesting to see where Penn State lands following all this. But I understand why Notre Dame fans are enjoying his demise, because I don't think he made himself very well liked with ahead of the Notre Dame game.
To me, the difference in 2016 Notre Dame and 2025 Penn State, what I know of Penn State, which isn't as much as I know about 2016 Notre Dame, is there was a little bit of cultural rot with Brian Kelly, but the biggest thing was the Brian Van Gorder hire and not pulling the plug faster on that. And I know I'm generally somebody that feels like fans want to pull the plug on an assistant coach too fast. That one, they were definitely justified. That should have never gone to a year 3. Even going to year 2 was a little bit risky, but Brian was enamored with who Brian Van Gorder was before football changed and became up-tempo at that point and spread out offenses, because he was really good in the old-timey football. I think that was at the center of it. The other thing was Brian Kelly's willingness to be humble and say, yep, I need to make over myself and I need to make over my staff, but it starts with me. I don't think James Franklin's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Scott Fingen chimed in, is BVG an option at Penn State? I did my
only
best
if
to
they
stifle my
drop
laugh.
out of their conference.
Brian Habermill says, any validity to a 3-safety defense this week if the front 4 can get home on the pass rush?
So you're talking about having a safety play instead of the nickel, or you're talking about what position leaves the field to get that third safety on the field? That would be my question. I mean, Notre Dame plays a dime package sometimes with a third safety. And they have before, so that would make some sense. But the thing that complicates that a little bit, it's depending, I guess, who the safety is USC is just a way better running team than they have been. Now it'll be interesting. Notre Dame suddenly is a good run defense. They're in the top 25, which I didn't think that we would say this year in rush defense. They've improved that much in their rush defense. The dime, but again, what are you giving up to play the dime? That's what I'm curious about. What, you're just going to play with one linebacker then? So Tate Johnson could play a lot of different places. I guess Jalen Stroman could be in that package. What do you think, Tyler?
Yes, but then is Jalen Stroman helping you in coverage? That's why he's not in the starting lineup anymore, because he wasn't as good in coverage. So is he better than playing a linebacker? I think that 3 safeties at times will be part of the mix, but I don't think coming out on first down and playing it would make a lot of sense unless you feel like USC has already abandoned its running game, because I think Notre Dame could be susceptible to the run in situations like that. Certainly, Stroman is good against the run. Tate Johnson, all of Notre Dame's safeties, I think, are pretty solid against the run, but I wouldn't necessarily take them over a linebacker. So that's the Sophie's choice, I guess, in terms of what you want to do in figuring out how to defend USC's offense.
Yeah, McCree is a pretty good tight end too, so you have to account for him. So it's a little bit complicated. But the thing is, you got to mix up your looks, you got to mix up your personnel, and you need to get some pass rush on Mayava, and that has not been easy this year. But again, Notre Dame is the best pass defense that I will have seen this year so far.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about what to expect from USC. I think we hit USC's offense pretty good in our conversation earlier, so let's talk about the defense. How improved do you think this USC defense is compared to last year?
I think they've done a really good job with emphasizing stopping the run. I think they've done a very good job of rushing the passer without being too gambling on that. Although again, they if they don't get home, they give up a lot with some of their blitz packages and stuff. They're the 98th team in pass efficiency defense, which doesn't match their other numbers. But I think they're, other than third down, other than some of their gambling, I think they've been pretty good. The thing about it is this team is this is a better matchup for Notre Dame with CJ Carr at quarterback than it is Riley Leonard at quarterback against that defense, against this particular configuration. But I do think they're better, and USC had to get better on defense. That was going to be what pushed Lincoln Riley out the door if they didn't get better on defense. But this Notre Dame game is going to be a real test for them. They'll get one from Oregon as well later in the season. Those are two really big games. To me, this is a playoff qualifier elimination game. The loser goes to the Pop-Tarts Bowl or whatever it is USC goes to when they don't make the playoff.
Yeah, the rush defense is the thing that is statistically improved the most. The 29th right now with giving up 108.5 yards per game. They ranked 53rd last year. The passing defense is about the same, and actually they're worst in terms of passing efficiency defense. So that is a good sign for Notre Dame with the efficiency that CJ Carr has been playing with. Luke Altmaier, the Illinois quarterback, threw for 328 yards and 2 touchdowns. He completed almost 77% of his passes on 20 of 26. So Illinois is sort of the blueprint in terms of beating USC this season. I think Notre Dame would hope its defense maybe plays a little bit better than Illinois did, at least at the end. Illinois did build up a little bit of a lead there against USC. What matchups do you think are the most concerning for Notre Dame?
For me, you mean on both sides of the ball or just?
Yeah, either any side of any aspect.
Yeah. I also want to throw in USC is one of the most penalized teams in the country, and they're consistently, I can't remember when they weren't. I don't know why that is, but they are consistently one of the most penalized teams in the country. The two lines are going to be Notre Dame's defensive line against USC's offensive line. I think is a really intriguing matchup. And on paper, USC has that matchup in their pocket. Notre Dame's defensive line has really been surging with the sacks and the pressures lately. And some of that's Notre Dame's linebackers as well. So I love that matchup. The Mekhi Lemon matchup is the ultimate chess match, I think. What Notre Dame does on defense to mess with him without giving up other things that are going to allow somebody else to beat him. Again, Jacoby Lane had 3 touchdowns last year in that game, and that was a problem. And CJ Carr against USC's pass defense, and CJ Carr at the line of scrimmage, I think, is huge. What he does in terms of checking out of different plays to better looks and better plays for Notre Dame. And I'm not just talking about 4th down. I'm talking about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down too. He's been outstanding with that. He's 7th in the country right now in pass efficiency. The last time Notre Dame had someone finish in the top 10 was Jimmy Clausen in 2009.
Yeah, I'm interested. Like, what can Notre Dame do to make Mayava uncomfortable? I think you nailed most of the most important matchups, but I really think Notre Dame's pass rush has been better in recent weeks. I certainly the quality of offensive lines that Notre Dame has played against has decreased as the season has gone on. But I really think that this defensive line of Notre Dame is gaining some confidence. Boubacar Traore is a significant piece for Notre Dame in its pass rush. The linebackers are getting more involved and being more productive in that way. So I think that'll be something to watch against USC, whose offensive line has been improving in recent years. That was one of the knocks on USC, but I don't think it's as big of a knock on USC anymore.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Notre Dame has been kind of slow starting offensively the last couple of games, and then they've kicked it into gear. That's not going to work in this game. They need to be strong out the jump. If they can be in a tennis match with USC back and forth, you score, we score, they're okay with that. But you get down a couple of scores, then USC kind of has you with their pass rush and some of the things that they do well. So I think that's a situation Notre Dame doesn't want to get in. Now, I haven't gotten behind, but they've played these low-scoring first halves with Boise and NC State.
All right, Rajon says, how many points do we need to win? I say 32.
According to my score prediction, 32 would be enough. I have Notre Dame scoring more than that, but I think 32 is probably the magic number, right around there, 31, 32.
I am pulling up my prediction. I'm pretty sure I went over. Yeah, I spoiler alert, picked Notre Dame 41, USC 38. So I'm still expecting a high-scoring game, even though Notre Dame's defense has improved. I just think USC's offense is that good.
Yeah, and there's sometimes you get in games like that, even with a defense that's improving or good. You think of some of the playoff games where there's teams with top 10 offenses and they get into a track meet. Just that's how games go sometimes.
But I have been overestimating the opponent's score for a few weeks in a row now. Yeah. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, that might be a good sign that I'm expecting USC to score a lot, because in recent weeks I've been pretty far off on the opponent's score. Scott Fegan says, is this USC team good enough to beat Ohio State?
They wouldn't play them unless they played them in the championship game. And right now they are not in the trajectory to do that. Indiana and Ohio State, if they win out, they would play each other in the championship game. USC is one of 9 teams that's tied with, or not, they're not tied, but they have one conference loss. USC has one more win than the rest in that group. They're 3-1. Everybody else is 2-1. So USC would need some help to get into that tiebreaker to play Ohio State. I don't think they're good enough to beat Ohio State. I think Ohio State is more complete than USC.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, like, could it happen? Yeah, I mean, it's college football, but I wouldn't predict it to happen. I think Ohio State is continuing to round into a more balanced team and a more complete team, like Eric said. And I think most teams
is having a heck of a year.
Will have a hard time with Ohio State.
And tell me where the game is played too. USC in its last 12 trips into the Eastern or Central time zone is 1-11, and the one win was over Purdue this year.
All right, Outbound, thanks for submitting this again. I'm dealing with a very annoying mouse issue that is like double clicking too many times, so it's like unclicking some of the questions I put stars on to get to later. So it's an inside baseball explanation, but thank you for resubmitting this. Do you guys think Mike Denbrock is playing chess with some of these calls? And I believe he was referring to the 4th down calls and just setting up plays for future use. You
mean by not having them be successful, or he's showing that and then, okay, now we're going to do the real ones against USC? Is that the gist of it, Tyler?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, let me answer this very generally then. When I was a youth football coach, I was fortunate to have a father-in-law that was a really, really good high school coach, won state championship with Blair Keel as his quarterback. And when we went to design plays, you do design plays with future things later in the game in mind. Like we had this boot action on the running plays that we ran, and the quarterback would just aimlessly run off to the left. And then there was a point in the game where the quarterback would actually keep the ball and nobody followed him. So you do set up plays, but I don't think in this particular thing that Denbrock is saying, well, let's have crappy plays on fourth down and then we'll have the really good ones in the second half. What I do think he is doing, though, is he's evolving the offense. He's adding plays to the playbook every week. And I think you're going to see some different personnel groups in the second half of the season, especially when Cooper Flanagan comes back. He wants to have lots of gears. He wants to be able to play fast, play slow, play big, play fast, lots of different looks to find your weaknesses and get mismatches. So outbound with that, I love your question if that's what you intended to ask it. And if I didn't answer it, I'll blame it on Tyler and his mouse.
Outbound said not just USC and not fourth down either. So I guess the entire game plan. I'm just not following. I think Notre Dame's been playing particularly good on offense for the most part. I don't. Maybe the suggestion is that Notre Dame has been playing more vanilla.
Why
on
they
offense
start
the last
slow?
Couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think in the Miami game that was true because it was a kind of a blind date for Mike Denbrock and that defensive coordinator. I don't think this deep in the season, when you have that much film on people, that it's okay. I think there are some execution issues that have kept them. And Marcus addressed it today. There's been some penalties that have really put them behind the sticks, and that's, I think, been the bigger problem.
T. Dawson says, do you expect Love to get more passing targets with new center and Greathouse possibly being out?
I mean, Love has been getting a lot of targets this season. I think that's one of the reasons Greathouse hasn't gotten as many opportunities. One of the reasons, one of them has been Will Pauling's been sharing time with him and Jordan Faison's emergence. But I certainly expect Love to get involved in the passing game for sure.
Yeah, I like you said, I'm not sure that the lack of a center, the lack of Ashton Craig or Greathouse's absence or availability would necessarily change that significantly, but I do think Love's an important part of the passing game. Notre Dame has shown the ability to stretch the field, and I think that can make Love even more dangerous because maybe you're more worried about some of the other receivers, and that gives him some more room to work as a receiver. There was one, I think it was Love. It was sort of the classic like angle route that running backs love. People who play video games are aware of that because it works so well when you play like the NCAA football game. But there was like I think it was Eli Raridon like was so close to him. It seemed like some sort of a mix-up. So they got to get some things ironed out there. But yeah, getting Love the ball in space in any situation is a good game plan in my opinion. All right. We want to talk a little bit about the college ball playoff race, Eric. The conversation about Notre Dame's college ball playoff chances certainly would end with a loss this weekend. But what do you think a win would do for the Irish?
I think it's significant, and some of it relates to how well USC does the rest of the season. But and I'm going to do an article on this when we get a little bit closer to the first CFP top 25, just kind of go over what the committee really looks at. There's a lot of things that don't fit in a tweet that the committee does. Like they'll look at a team like USC, and if USC is, let's say, averaging 45 points, I don't have it in front of me, and Notre Dame holds them to 30, that's significant in the committee's eyes. And so this USC game is, I think, Notre Dame's best chance to distance itself from the two losses at the beginning of the season. I think it's a big perceptual game. And again, Notre Dame doesn't have any wiggle room for error in terms of losing a game at this point. So huge, important. And what USC brings to the table on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it would be hard to be bigger, I think. I mean, certainly USC could be even like more daunting of an opponent, but in terms of what's left on Notre Dame's schedule, I think it's pretty obvious that this is number one by a wide margin in terms of the importance for Notre Dame to win and get a sort of a notch on its resume in the winning column rather than in the losing column. All right, let's identify some second half stalwarts. Eric, which 5 players do you think could dictate how the Irish finish the second half of the regular season?
So I got asked this in my live chat last week, and these aren't the 5 best players on the team like Jeremiah Love and things like that. These are people that could raise the level of their game, and one of them I thought has started to do that, and that's Drake Bowen. I think if Drake Bowen is playing in the second half of the season like he did in the playoff last year, Notre Dame's a different team, especially against the run. I think Dallas Golden is going to be a really important player to raise the level of his game, to like Tay Johnson did when Tay Johnson became a starter. And Tay Johnson has an extra year under his belt, but at a different position. I think Dallas Golden's going to have to play whether Devontae Smith comes or not. He's not going to be the Iron Man that Thomas Harper and Jordan Clark were at the nickel position. Emil Wagner just hasn't been. I mean, he was a guy that got some preseason All-America love going into the year. He's not even been close to that player this year. So I think he does. I mean, we got to throw in whoever the backup center is long-term. I think Cooper Flanagan could really make an impact on this team. And then the last person I'll say, somebody on the other side, the defensive end opposite Boubacar Traore, whether it be Jordan Botelho or Bryce Young, or Josh Burnham, one of those guys really stepping forward and being a complement, kind of a bookend nightmare on the other side of the line. How about you, Tyler? Who did you come up with?
Yeah, Bowen was the guy I included on. Bowen was the guy I included on my list. Joe Otting I included on my list with the knowledge of him being in line to be the starting center now. Christian Gray is someone I put on my list in terms of, I think, of the 2 cornerbacks, he is the one to be more prone to ups and downs. And if he can play at a consistently high level, I think that continues to make Notre Dame's defense really tough to deal with. And then I put CJ Carr and Jeremiah Love on the list. I know they're obvious superstars in terms of the importance to this team, but I just think like their ability to keep raising their game can maybe more than anyone else guarantee the continued success of this football team because of, I think, how high their ceilings are. All right. Speaking of being at the midseason mark, wanted to sort of reflect on Notre Dame's strengths this season and its weaknesses, what statistical oddities we may have noticed this season. What do you feel are the strengths of Notre Dame right now?
Well, definitely offensively. I mean, they can do everything. They can run the ball. They have 2 of the best running backs in the country. CJ Carr is 7th in the nation in pass efficiency. I did do a midseason All-America team last night for the AP, which comes out Wednesday. I had to vote. And I mean, I think both quarterbacks in this game are in that conversation. A lot of the guys that were the preseason picks are way down the list. They're not even close. I ended up voting for Julian Sayin as the half-year quarterback. He's number 2 right now in pass efficiency in the country. Mayava's 3, Carr is 7. And suddenly there's things on the defense that Notre Dame's doing really well. Certainly the pass defense will be tested, but they've improved 63 points in 3 weeks against some decent quarterbacks, Taylon Green and Maddox Madsen and CJ Bailey. CJ Bailey's in the top 30 in pass efficiency. I mean, some pretty good quarterbacks. Notre Dame does some cool things on special teams that are really good. I think they really need to have a reliable kicker or are we not doing the weaknesses yet? Did I jump?
No, go ahead.
There? Okay.
Go ahead.
A reliable kicker, 4th down, the short yardage and the 4th down stuff needs to get settled out. I still think that there's another level for the linebackers on defense, more tackles for loss. Notre Dame is still way down near the bottom in that, but sacks, they're 34th. They were almost dead last a few weeks ago, and they've moved up to 34th pretty fast. Turnover margin, Notre Dame's doing really, really good job. The metrics I always look at are rush offense, rush defense, total defense, pass efficiency, and turnover margin. And Notre Dame is trending positively in all 5 of those things. That's a really good sign. That's what championship teams do well.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for us this week. I don't have much information to offer on the recruiting front. I know Kyle Kelly and Mike Singer are leading our efforts there over at blueandgold.com. Will be another big recruiting weekend for Notre Dame, hosting recruits, maybe trying to flip some US or Penn State commits or former commits at this point, because I think US or Penn State's class is on the verge of maybe falling apart, obviously understandably so given the head coach firing, but especially playing against USC is a big game when Notre Dame recruits in California, and how well USC has been recruiting. And we'll have plenty of more coverage of that over on blueandgold.com this week. We appreciate everyone tuning in to us tonight, and we will see you later in the week with our Third and Gold podcast.